Alex Pereira versus Jamaal Hill, UFC 300 main event. Let's go. Top to bottom, in totality, this is the best card that the UFC has ever had in the history of its existence, okay? 12 current or former champions, 7 fighters that are ranked in the pound for pound rankings, over 70 bonuses between the fighters on this card, and 10% of all of the people who have ever held a UFC belt, 10% of them in the history of the organization are on this card.
That's the numbers speak for itself. Just the stats right there. Like you can't dispute those stats. Like if those are the stats, the numbers are the numbers, the stats are the stats. And it's not just about, when you think of it too, think of it this way. Like you talk about the champions that have held the belt that are on this card, former and present. But then also just the level of excitement, like you said, the bonuses that these fighters have gotten accumulated is just outstanding. This really is the greatest card of all.
The main event did not turn out to be John Jones or Conor McGregor, but there is still a lot at stake and a lot of implications in terms of both of these fighters. And of course, we're talking about the current light heavyweight champion, Alex Pereira, versus the former light heavyweight champion in Jamaal Hill, who did not lose the title. He had to vacate the title because of an injury when he tore his Achilles tendon playing basketball last summer during International Fight Week. And I think you were there, weren't you?
I was there. I was going to be on the team. I just want to say that I was going to play, but I showed up a little too late, so they didn't give me a jersey.
Oh.
But yeah, so I don't want to be attributed to, breaking Jamaal Hill's ankle, you know what I'm saying? Even though I'm very well capable of that with my handles, but I didn't do it. I did see it when it did happen though. And Jamaal could ball, but it wasn't worth the losing the title.
Yeah.
But all in all, if this works out for him where he wins UFC 300, it was worth it.
Absolutely. Listen, it has become the plot of a mixed martial arts movie, right? Because you've got Jamaal Hill winning the title from Glover Teixeira and the sensei of Alex Pereira. And we will never forget that look, that shot of Alex Pereira just staring down Jamaal Hill after he won the belt. And that was the beginning of the build up to this fight. And while the build up to this fight doesn't equal some other big ones we've seen in the past, there is a lot of meat on this bone. And I think, I just was doing a podcast with Matt Brown, and we were talking about the and Damon. I'm forgetting Damon's last name from MMA Junkie. I'm dying right now.
Damon Martin.
Damon Martin. Thank you. Golly. We were talking about the stakes of this fight, and there's actually a lot at stake for Jamaal Hill beyond the belt as well. I feel like, coming into this fight, he's kind of being counted out a little bit, and I feel like people are not giving him the respect that his resume commands. Do you agree?
That's 100. You're 100% right about that. I feel like when he was the champ, like he was only the champ for a little bit, and he never really got to sit in that. He never really got to sit in that throne long enough for people to respect him as the champ. Then when he gave up the belt and he wasn't the champ no more and he gained weight, he kind of became the butt of some jokes, right?
Yeah.
Like people didn't give him the respect that he rightfully deserved. And we kind of wrote him off. Like I'd see him around at the Apex and nobody was like, "Hey champ, what's going on?" Like he was just hanging out like one of the fellas. And I'm like, let's not forget who this man is. He's still the champ. And he's still the protagonist or antagonist, depending on how you look at it, in the Kung Fu movie where he's like, "You killed my teacher. Why? And that's Alex Pereira saying that about Jamaal Hill going to avenge Glover Teixeira. But Laura, I do have to mention this point though. I think this is the best main event. In hindsight, looking back, this is the best main event they could have came up with. Now, I know, like you said, John Jones, Tom Aspinall, Conor McGregor. But if we had a main event like that, it would have taken away from UFC 300 and
Mhm.
all the other great fights. If John Jones was on this card, this card would have been about John Jones. But because we have Jamahal Hill and Alex Pereira, it's not only just about them, it's about the whole card, which is a fantastic card. But because the stakes are so high with Alex Pereira and Jamahal Hill, it's still very valuable.
Yeah. That's actually no, that's a really good point because you're right. It does feel you kind of do get this feeling that like every fight on this card isn't just fun, it matters. Every fight on this card does. Talking about Alex, I wonder your thoughts on just him and his rise to this level of stardom because he has 7 fights into his UFC career and he has already beaten 4 former or current UFC champions. I mean, I don't know that he has a run that's comparable to anybody. I can't think of anybody else that has done it quite like this.
I mean, this is going to sound kind of bad, but it is kind of similar to the run. I mean, it's kind of similar to Ronda Rousey's initial
A
run.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, where he just came in and just wiped out every contender that was in the division at the time. I don't want to say that it's because, when Ronda did it, I thought the division was very green. When Alex did it, it wasn't that the division was green, it was just tailor made for him at the time.
Yeah.
It was tailor made with strikers at the time for him to be able to do that to.
Well, and he had a destination, right? I mean, he had an interesting story in that he had a date with the champ before he even entered the UFC. There was so much history there that it allowed him to, he you go back and you look at Charles Oliveira's work on his way to the title or Justin Gaethje's work on his way to his first title shot. The resumes are certainly different and they are definitely deeper, but his ability to get to the top but then stay at the top has been what has really impressed me because you could make an argument that he was fast tracked, but what he's done since getting there, I mean, that's a resume enough. 2 division champion. And I know that we're not here to talk about this, but I think it's a real possibility that he could do with 3 divisions. He could
It's
win at heavyweight.
Yeah, he certainly could. But I wanna attribute a lot of his success to we just referenced it, and that is Glover Teixeira. I mean, that is Glover Teixeira. I mean, I think the chemistry that those two have has really worked. And to be under Glover's wing the way he has been, I mean, 2 completely different styles, but Glover understands fighting so much. I mean, because Glover, for a Brazilian guy, look at me, I'm sounding racist already. But for a Brazilian guy like him and his relationship with John Hackleman and the whole Chuck Liddell thing, they understand combat
Mm,
in a different way. Like, because John Hackleman has this whole thing about you have to know how to fight in the street. This is combat. And Glover Teixeira really responded well to that theory and really takes to that well. And you can sense that in the way he fights. Like he's all about this is combat, this is war. And he's passed that on to Alex. And just having that type of information from Glover has really elevated Alex's game. And not to mention having one of the best grapplers in the division of all time, Glover being one of the better grapplers of all time in the light heavyweight division. And his wrestling to strikes to wrestling is probably the best we've seen at light heavyweight. So for him to be able to deal with Glover on a daily basis, I attribute a lot of Alex's success to training with Glover.
Well, and I think, for this fight in particular too, it's going to be a tremendous help because we ask fighters a lot of times if they have, a teammate who has fought the opponent that they're about to fight, did so and so give you any tips? And a lot of times you kind of get the sense like not really, or maybe they told them a few things, but it's not really the same thing. I- this is such a unique situation where the coach who's able to look at information and digest it and regurgitate it in a different way than a teammate would, um, has such a recent fight with the opponent of the now student. It's such a different situation. And you can see, I can't remember if it was Countdown or Embedded, but I think it was Countdown. He's very much coaching Alex Pereira specifics about how to fight Jamaal Hill from his very recent memory in terms of how Jamaal felt in different positions, what his habits are. I mean, you can watch the tape, but then being able to feel that tape in your own body and tell it to your student, that's another level of preparation, which I think is just a really interesting thing to think about coming into this one.
And that's gotta hurt Jamaal a bit too. It has to, because it's not like he took a year off to improve.
Yeah.
He took a year off to rehab. So essentially, he's coming back like the same guy that left, right? He's coming back the same guy that left, not a different guy.
Best
Because
case scenario.
right,
That's the best case scenario.
best case scenario, he's coming back the same guy that beat Glover. Worst case scenario is that he's a little labored because of the leg.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the asset to have Glover in your corner in this situation, because he's the last person that's felt him.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into any more details, I don't want to forget to do the tail of the tape. So let me just pull this up real quick. Alex Pereira is 6-1 in the UFC. Jamahal Hill also 6-1 with one no contest in the UFC. Both of them are 6'4". Both of them have a 79-inch reach, 79-inch reach. No advantage to either man. Alex Pereira 36, Jamahal Hill 32. So in terms of size, length, I mean, they are dead on. Striking accuracy, 62% for Alex Pereira. That is extremely high. The UFC average is 42%. 52.8% accuracy for Jamahal Hill. 5 significant strikes landed per minute for Alex Pereira, and 6.99 for Jamahal Hill. That is extremely high, especially for light heavyweight. Takedown accuracy is 100% for Alex Pereira. And they actually don't have one listed for Jamaal, which I'm assuming means he hasn't shot him too many people. Takedown defense, dead even almost. 70% for Pereira, 70.8% for Jamahal Hill. I don't even know why I'm talking about grappling stats. These two are not going to be grappling. Interestingly, we know, of course, that Alex Pereira has been knocked down, and it was at middleweight, where you would likely assume that there's slightly less heavier punches than at light heavyweight. Jamahal Hill never been knocked down in the UFC. I think these are some interesting ones to call out as well. I'm probably not going to get into much of the grappling stats because I don't know how much we're going to see of that in this fight. But in terms of their target breakdown, I always think this is interesting for strikers. Alex Pereira targets the head 42.4% of the time, the body 32.7% of the time, and the leg 25% of the time. That is very high kicking percentage. And for Jamaal, it looks a lot different. 68.4% for the head, 24.1% for the body, and 7.6% for the leg. And I think, I remember when we were breaking down the fight between Yuri and Alex, you and I both talked about how we felt like the calf kick, the leg kicks would be a huge factor. Man, were they ever, right? I
Shoot
don't
him
mean
up.
to beat a dead horse, aka the lead leg of whoever opponent it is, but this is a tough thing for a guy coming in off, an Achilles injury. It's something we got to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's definitely something we got to pay attention to. But one thing, if you've ever been in a room with Jamahal Hill talking about fighting, is that he's extremely intelligent.
Mhm.
He understands the game, he understands strategy, he understands strengths and weaknesses. And you have to expect him to be prepared for the leg kick. Like,
Mhm.
he had to have been working on that since he found out that he was fighting UFC 300. He had to have started working on that. But the problem with that is this, is that if you are intentionally working on something to defend something and it still doesn't work, your defense doesn't work, that is extremely disheartening, because you were counting on that to stop him. So that's the thing. That's the thing with Alex, is that we know Alex is going to leg kick. So Jamal's like, Jamal's going to, all right, I got to stop the leg kick. I'll stop the leg kick, take that weapon away from him. I'm good. But if Alex still is able to make those leg kicks work, that would be devastating to Jamahal Hill's game plan. Devastating from a physical, obviously from a physical standpoint, from his leg getting chewed up, but also from a mental and emotional standpoint, that what you did everything you could and it didn't work. You did everything to prepare for it. It didn't work. That is mentally devastating for a fighter. So I think that's one of the keys in this fight is if how that leg kick is dealt with. Because it's coming. So it just how that's dealt with is a big factor in this fight.
Something that we'll know pretty early, I'm guessing too.
Yeah, and we'll know early. And the another factor that's going to be a big key to this fight is speed. Jamahal Hill's speed. That's the one advantage he has over Alex Pereira is speed. And Alex, you know, he's very accurate, but I still question his defense, especially when he gets a little confident. I question his defense. And Jamahal Hill's the faster fighter. If he can get him early with his speed, that's going to be a big key to this fight.
What do you think it is about Jamal's style that I just don't feel like people respect the level of technician that he is? Like and I will admit that I fell into this trap early in his career where I didn't always appreciate the the level of sophistication of what he was putting out there because I saw like an edge to it, like a rawness to it. But when you I mean, I mean, obviously the results speak for themselves, but the footwork, his positioning, his understanding of where to be in relation to his opponent, in relation to his opponent's weapons, it's very high level. Why do you feel like it is that he just doesn't get credit for being the technician that he really is?
Well, he hasn't had a lot of history. He doesn't have a lot of history. I mean, you said he's 6-1, so he doesn't have a lot of. I mean, 6 wins. That's still not a lot. And when you look at those 6 wins, I mean, some of them were early where we still were just like, oh, he's just a regular guy. He's
Yeah,
just Jamahal Hill. And
powerful.
that right, just a powerful guy. Um, but I think this is an opportunity for him to really establish himself as a true technician. And at some level, I mean, I'm not going to quote you on this, but I mean, he got a little hood boxing.
What did I say that? Did I ever say that?
No, I don't
What?
know if you've ever said that, but I mean, it sometimes it looks a little, a little hood boxing, and it doesn't look as polished as some guys. His hands are never like right here, and it's. But what he's doing is so effective because he's fearless
Mm,
and he has confidence, and that's the difference. And I've always said that there's different layers to your fighting style. Like what you do with your body is one layer, and that's like shadow boxing and hitting pads and hitting the bag, and how you handle that. That's like the first layer. But the second layer is how you do if you're able to do that, and how you do with another person in front of you. Because we see a big difference. Some people hit pads and they shadow box and they look great. Soon somebody gets in front of them, they fall apart.
yep.
And Jamahal Hill doesn't do that. He doesn't fall apart. He's able to maintain his composure to still stay within his highest level of potential in terms of his striking acumen. And that is to hit people on the chin and be looking where he's punching.
We all know that that left hook of Alex is, a big weapon, the leg kicks we talked about. What do you feel like are Jamal's biggest weapons? What are his biggest assets?
I just
I know
think
you
his
said speed.
his speed,
Yeah.
his accuracy, he's very accurate. Um, and his defense is actually extremely underrated.
Mhm.
He has probably the most underrated defense in the game. He doesn't miss an assignment. He rarely misses an assignment. Like his hands can be wherever, but he's like ping pong. Like wherever that fist goes, boop, his hand covers it. I mean, he's got really good hand-eye coordination in terms of catching a punch. I think those are some of the things that we underrate with Jamahal Hill is just his natural instinct. Like he's a natural fighter. Like in another life, he was fighting in the Coliseum. So
I feel
he's just
Go ahead, sorry.
no, I'm saying he's just a natural fighter with natural fighting instincts. He's able to look at targets and hit them. He's able to see targets being delivered towards him. He's able to catch those things, and those are things that really can make or break a fighter.
I feel like him coming into this one with a gigantic chip on his shoulder is a good thing for him too, right? If there's any lingering concern about the injury. I think it's going to be completely overridden by this giant middle finger attitude toward the way that, he feels like, whether it's the media or the fans, have been approaching, their perception of this matchup.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. He's got a chip on his shoulder. I mean, he is, for one, I think he's always thought he was better than Alex. Even before he was champ, he probably looked at Alex and was like, I'm better than that guy. Like, he's good, but I'm better than him. And I think this is his opportunity to go out there and prove it. And the fact that everything is on the line for him here, like he got this opportunity on short notice, just like he got the opportunity to fight Glover on short notice. And he steps up to these challenges. And that is another reason why I'm so glad that these two guys are headlining 300, because these are two guys that don't allow the politics and BS to get
Yeah.
in the way of them fighting. They didn't, when this fight got offered to Jamahal, he probably wasn't like, well, how much y'all gonna pay me?
Yeah.
And negotiating for months. He was like, 300, sign me up. Because I remember seeing him at the hotel with no people there asking for Bilal Muhammad to train with him.
I love that about him. And I also love that when he got injured, he immediately vacated. That's not something we've seen everybody do. It takes a lot of, I don't know, it takes a lot of balls, frankly, confidence to have the respect for the division, have the respect for the belt, to immediately say, this is what has happened to me. I'm going to lay this down, let the division do their thing, because I'm confident that when I'm ready, I'm going to come back and I'm going to pick up that belt right where I left it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who does that? No one would have done that except for Yuri.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, but again, those guys, like we're dealing, I think the light heavyweight division right now is at a point where we're dealing with true samurai.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these guys are true warriors. We could say what we want about the other divisions. I mean, I love the bantamweight division. It's my favorite division. Lightweight division is stacked as can be. But we're also dealing with guys that are kind of prima donnas that don't want to show up, that don't want to fight this guy, don't want to fight that guy. I'm just waiting for. But when we talk about light heavyweights, that's the one thing that's been consistent over the years. These guys show up. These guys love to fight. And this goes all the way back to Chuck Liddell. These guys fight. And I love that about them.
What's your prediction for how this fight looks at the very least?
I see it could go a couple of different ways, but I'm gonna side with Jamal's speed and his ability to deal with that leg kick. I'm gonna side with that. I got a confidence in Jamaal. Just he sold me on his own confidence, and I believe that his ability to deal with that leg kick is gonna be strong. He might take the first one, and then he's gonna go, okay, I gotta respect it. I gotta respect it. And then after that, I think that he's just as long as Alex, but I think he uses his length better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his speed and his length is going to be the deciding factor in this fight.
You're in the minority. I love it. I love it when you give us a zesty take, Dean.
Oh, listen, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make predictions.
I love it. You know what? I'm not going to give a prediction, but I agree with the mentality that you talk about, Jamaal having, and he is a guy who rises to every occasion that is put in front of him. And when I think about the possibility of him going out there, recapturing the belt that he willingly laid down and doing it against a guy who is a two-division champion, who is the hottest star in the moment, who is the superior technician, all of these things. I mean, what an incredible moment that would be for Jamaal Hill if he can get that done this weekend.
And I think people got to understand this. When I make predictions, it's not that I'm rooting for them. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen.
Sure.
I'm not rooting for Jamaal Hill. I'm not rooting for Alex. I'm not rooting for either of them. I just think that's what's going to happen. I think Jamaal Hill is just going to, on Saturday night, be sharper. And I think he's going to walk away with the belt. I'll be happy for him, but it's not like I'm rooting for him. I'll be happy for him.
Dean Thomas just calling it how he sees it, ladies and gentlemen. Leave the man alone.
That's right. Leave me alone.
Leave the man alone. We
Or
appreciate
don't. I don't care either way.
Yeah,
I don't care
exactly.
either way.
Or bring it. Either way.
Yeah.
We appreciate you, Dean, very, very much. Guys, there will be more UFC 300 videos coming out this week. There are, of course, other videos on this channel that we would appreciate you hitting the like and the subscribe button. That helps Dean and I so much. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time.